Street covenant is my life. That's what street covenant is, just keeping it raw and keeping it real. Street covenant is my life. And so I'd like to say it's loosely based on a true story, but the truth of the matter is, that's my story. And I cut myself open and I bled on those pages, you know. And my life. I was a young girl growing up in the inner cities of Roxbury and Boston, and the choices that she made in her life and how her life began to ricochet between Boston and New York. It takes you a bit on the journey where she grew up with a conscious mother in the Black Power movement, where there were panthers and rallies, and so she grew up understanding who she was and what she was supposed to be. But when you get to the streets, life could sometimes take a turn. And in the journey, she's looking for a father, you know. The social ills that we deal with, you know, it touches on all those social ills, but in the same time, I also tried to make sure that I could at least educate the readers on some level, whether it was sharing some of the history of Boston's Faneuil Hall, or talking about, through a conversation, maybe talking about how Lincoln wasn't the one who really freed the slaves, or why he did it, you know. So I felt like I needed to not just tell the story, but to also engage and educate my readers as well. So it was a journey, and there were some areas that I had to cry. I had to cry through them, and so that you could feel it, you know. It wasn't just some pretty words on paper. It wasn't, oh, I shouldn't tell that part. It was, no, damn it, this needs to be told too. So it was some very painful parts that I had to get through, you know, and some truths that I had to reveal in order for people to understand the covenant that this character had with the streets.
Did you often think that you shouldn't, or did you get to a point where you said, I can't do it, I shouldn't do this?
No. What I did was I measured, and well, in my study of the craft, I had to learn to write as though it wasn't like my mother was over my shoulder or I was going to hurt someone's feelings. I had to write like abandon those kind of things and just write, just tell the story. But what I was careful not to do was to just air the dirty laundry. You know, does it get gritty? Yeah. Does it get painful? Yeah. But it's my grit and my pain. There was no need for me to tell someone else's story. Or they may be affiliated with it. This is mine. So I never thought for 1 minute that I should stop. In fact, I thought I should go on. And the funny thing is, the first draft of it was so long. My niece, who had recently graduated from Emerson for journalism, she was like, you can't do this. Roots was only 900 pages. I can't. You know, so we made a joke about that. But yeah, it was like you can always write, and you can never write too much, but you can definitely write too little. So it's just what it is.
Where did you start writing at?
Where?
Where were you when you started writing? Where were you when you decided I need to write this book?
I was in prison. And you know, when somebody tells you something, then another person tells you, yeah. But when 4 people start to tell you some things, you might want to take a look at it. So when it was suggested to me, you need to write a story, your life. And I didn't think it was anything special about my life. I think what I do know today is that it's not so much as special about me as what God has done with me. And so I got instruction. Like, what do I do? How do I do it? And at that point, it wasn't about studying the craft. It was just kind of telling the story. And I got a bunch of pads and pens, and had to let the girls know when you see me writing, please do not disturb me. Let me get this out. And don't even whisper to me, because a whisper is an interruption, whether you're screaming or whispering. And so that's what I did. I started it there. I started it in prison.
What did you go to prison for?
I went to prison for bank fraud. I went to prison for bank fraud, but here's the deal. And I take full responsibility, and it wasn't like, and I went to the feds. And, you know, you take responsibility, so you get a downward departure, so you get 2 points off your sentence, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't the taking responsibility in front of the judge, you know. That was the easy part, especially where I come from. Yeah, I did it. Yes. Now, just give me this plea and let me go do this. But it was in the visiting room with my little girl, who was 9 years old at the time. And when she realized I couldn't touch the money for the vending machine, she said, well, what did you do? What did you do? And her eyes swelled with tears that didn't seem like they should be. They weren't even big enough to hold those tears. There were so many of them. And I had to honestly admit to her and tell her what I did. So when I had to admit, it wasn't to judge. It was to my kid. And that was the most painful. And admitting to her that I took other people's money from the bank. But how I put it to her gentle 9-year-old self. And my reality is I didn't trust God. I could trust him for everything else except for that part. You know, then, like I'm gonna trust you, God, for the relationships and for safety and good health and all of those things. But I'm gonna have to take care of this money part. I'm gonna straighten this money part out. You big guy, you got everything else, but. And so that's how I explained it to her. I didn't trust God to help me when I wasn't working. And mommy went into other people's bank accounts and took their money. And I had no right to do that. And because it was a so-called cousin who wore a wire in my home, and the family knew about it, she immediately wanted to put the blame there. And she said, well, Tamika didn't have to tell on you. And I said, no, but if I didn't do it, Tamika would have nothing to tell.